Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our frequently asked questions session. We want to go over some of our frequently asked questions about the COVID-19 coverage that we're selling for travel during the COVID-19 pandemic. So welcome here today. We'll start with a few introductions. My name is Laurie York, and I'm a senior broker here at MediQuote. I've worked in the travel insurance industry for a long time. I've been with MediQuote for 15 years, and I worked at a travel insurance company for 5 years before that. So that's a long time, and I even worked in insurance before that. So I've been in insurance for pretty much my entire career, but love working at MediQuote and love dealing with clients and selling insurance here. And with me today, say hello, Pam.
Hi, everyone. My name's Pam Langevin. I'm a senior broker here at MediQuote. Been here since 2010, and prior to that, I did 5 years of property insurance. Um, Not only am I a senior broker, I'm also in charge of training the new brokers. And my favorite saying is that I plan to be here till I retire, so very long time yet to come.
Because you're very young. So there's a lot of time to go. Okay, so together we are going to answer all the frequently asked questions that we have put together about COVID coverage. So I'm going to start, Pam. I'm going to ask you the first question. You can give us the answer based on your knowledge. So the first question, are there different types of COVID coverage and how much different are they in price?
Well, COVID coverage does come in all shapes and sizes. You can buy policies that are strictly COVID only, meaning they don't cover any other emergency medical costs. They are designed strictly to provide coverage for COVID. That's especially useful if you already have a policy that has other coverage. We have other policies that cover both emergency medical costs as well as COVID, and they will vary in the amount of coverage that they provide for COVID, as well as some additional benefits for quarantining if necessary. They do differ in price, but the price seems to be more driven by the person's age and their medical conditions, as well as their destination, and not necessarily the coverage that they're offering.
Yeah, so many people ask for coverage with COVID insurance that we don't even quote very much coverage without COVID insurance. So it's hard to know what they would pay for that same coverage without COVID coverage because we just don't get that request
Exactly.
very often.
Exactly.
Okay, here you can answer this one as well. Do COVID plans include regular emergency medical coverage or just coverage for COVID?
Well, if it's a COVID only policy, then no, it would be designed just to cover medical costs incurred due to testing positive for COVID. So again, you'd have to make sure that you have other coverage in place for other medical situations. Um, if it is a plan that does provide both, then all medical costs are covered.
Yeah, so these COVID only plans, they would be good for like if you have credit card coverage or some other coverage that doesn't offer coverage for COVID, just coverage for everything else. So you can kind of put
Exactly.
them together.
Yeah. All right, here's one for you, Lori. Where on your policy does it indicate that we do have COVID coverage?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So basically, there's two different areas to look at to find out what your COVID coverage is. You should look on the insurance confirmation of insurance document. It would say on there if you've purchased like the COVID rider or some additional coverage for COVID. But then you should also check in the exclusions section because in the exclusions you're going to find the exclusion for the travel advisory, which obviously with the travel advisory in effect now, that's an important exclusion right now.
Exactly. Is the COVID coverage in Canadian or US dollars?
Ooh, another Another interesting question. I guess this one depends on which company you're purchasing with. Some companies have their maximums in Canadian dollars. Some companies have their maximums in US dollars. But I feel like if you've got enough coverage, it doesn't matter if it's Canadian or US. It will cover you for COVID. Like if over $1 million, I think is for sure enough coverage.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want any less than that.
Mhm. Okay, what about COVID coverage for long-term stays for seniors?
Well, when it comes to coverage, you can purchase a policy for a single trip or you can purchase an annual plan. When you're going for a long-term stay, we definitely have policies that offer coverage, whether it be, 2 months, 3 months, or even up to the full 6 months if they've decided to go that long. So it definitely is available.
Mhm.
Is the coverage available even during a non-essential travel ban?
Yeah, so pretty much like the coverage that we're selling that includes COVID is like extra coverage on top of the regular policy, and you're paying extra for that because you're getting coverage during the travel ban. So that's pretty much across the board available for anyone. So young people, seniors, snowbirds, long travel, short travel, all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's the next one. Will anything change if the Canadian travel advisory is elevated? So I think that means like if they bring it to the no, like no travel at all.
Okay, so currently the policies we are recommending that do have the COVID coverage, it's not based on the level of the travel advisory. It simply states that even though there is a travel advisory issued, they are removing that exclusion and providing coverage anyway. So if the travel advisory is either elevated or not, it's not going to impact the coverage on those policies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you need travel and COVID insurance when traveling within Canada, Lori?
Well, I mean, there are charges that you could incur if you were traveling within Canada that wouldn't be covered by the government health insurance plan of your province or territory of residence. So that's always been the case. Whether it's an ambulance ride or if you are too sick to drive your car home, the insurance company would pay to send your car home. All those types of things. In terms of COVID coverage, I mean, the same would apply if you feel like you need coverage that, you know, because of charges that you could incur that wouldn't be covered by your government health insurance plan, then you should definitely purchase travel and COVID coverage when traveling within Canada. Now, right now, there is no travel advisory issued by the government for travel within Canada. So you don't actually have to pay extra for COVID insurance. You can just buy a regular travel insurance plan, and that would cover you for like whatever medical problem that you might have, including COVID. But if that should change, then you would have to buy a special COVID rider.
Right.
Okay, does trip cancellation insurance cover COVID?
That's going to depend on the policy. There are a lot of insurance companies out there that will not cover you if the reason for cancellation happens to be because of COVID. Um, so you have to be very careful when you're looking at trip cancellation coverage and make sure to ask that question. Um, we do have one policy that will cover you as long as you've purchased the policy prior to anything being wrong. If you had to cancel due to COVID, it would provide some coverage for you.
Good answer.
Are you currently offering multi-trip annual plans that also include COVID coverage?
Yeah, so we have one company at the moment that really has good COVID coverage that the price isn't sky high. We have a couple of companies that are offering annual plans that include COVID, but some of those companies, the price is just so high that it's hard to justify the price for how much COVID coverage that they're providing. But yes, we do have some good options for sure. Okay, so the next section here is frequently asked questions about COVID add-ons and third-party insurance. Sounds exciting, doesn't it, Pam?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I already have a travel insurance policy. Can I purchase coverage just for COVID?
Absolutely. So we do have policies that are strictly COVID protection, so that if that's all you need, you don't have to purchase a policy that covers everything. You can just buy just the COVID coverage.
Perfect.
Does credit card travel insurance provide coverage for COVID?
Yeah, you know what? Every policy is different. And I don't know, I kind of feel like credit card companies haven't stepped forward and offered COVID coverage, but you'd have to read their policy to find out for sure what they offer. Have you heard of any credit card companies, Pam?
No, I have heard some credit card companies will offer coverage for other medical costs if you travel, but not the COVID.
Not the
So
COVID, yeah. Okay, does the WestJet coverage cover other health emergencies or just COVID? So I think that what they're talking about here is that coverage that WestJet is offering people when they fly on their planes.
yeah, my understanding is that that policy is for COVID related costs only. It doesn't cover any other health situation, just COVID,
Mhm.
and it's a limited amount.
Right. So I think the maximum is 200,000 and the maximum number of days is 21, correct?
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Can I use WestJet's 21-day coverage, then start my new MediQuote coverage?
Well, I'm glad you decided to get MediQuote coverage. Whoever wrote this question.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the way that, so we've read the policy, the WestJet policy, and the way it's written, basically, if your trip is 21 days or less, I believe, you have coverage for COVID. If it's more than 21 days, you don't have any coverage for COVID. So you would have to start from scratch. So if you are, planning to travel for longer than 21 days, then you have to use your MediQuote coverage for the entire trip.
Exactly.
Okay, can I top up my $200,000 of coverage through WestJet to get additional coverage? So I guess if their trip is 21 days or less and they have the $200,000 of coverage, but they just don't feel like that's enough.
Then yeah, absolutely. You could buy a second policy and both policies would work together to cover your medical situation. So you can buy additional coverage. Does my annual plan purchased before the pandemic include coverage for COVID, or do we need to purchase an add-on?
Yeah, so you know what? If you purchased an annual plan prior to the travel advisory, that was like back in the days when they never dreamed that the government would actually issue a travel advisory for the whole world. So, chances are, I'm going to say 99.9% of policies that were purchased before COVID are not going to, first of all, they're not going to give you coverage for COVID, but during the travel advisory. And if you're departing after the travel advisory was called, then you're not going to have coverage for anything. So yeah, you're going to have to do something likely. So whether it's purchase an add-on if that's available or whatever the case might be, but yes, you'll have to do something.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have an annual plan that was of no use to me because of COVID. Right, people can't travel. Can I get a refund or will I get a credit for next year?
Well, once an annual plan has become effective, insurance companies do not issue a refund on that policy. So unfortunately, no. I know some insurance companies were offering a bit of an extension, hoping that borders would open up, but that hasn't happened. So unfortunately for those policies that you weren't able to use, there is no refund available. Insurance companies just aren't making that allowance.
And I would add to that, not yet. Because what we
Not
also
yet.
have seen is that once one company does something, they all kind of do something. So we just kind of have to wait it out and see if one insurance company will make a move and offer some kind of credit or some kind of coverage or some kind of extension or something to insureds. And now I'm totally like, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't see into the future, but my guess is that there will at some point be one company that says, you know what, we need to do something, and then they'll do something, and then other companies will start to follow suit. But I could be wrong. Never know.
It would be nice.
It would be nice, though. It would be nice.
Frequently asked questions about vaccinations.
It's the hot topic.
The hot topic, absolutely.
Okay, one for you, Pam. Once I get the vaccine, would you suggest still buying COVID insurance?
Personally, yes, because even though you've gotten the vaccine, there's so little um, statistical evidence as to whether or not it would completely prevent you from getting COVID. There's still the possibility in my mind. If it was my family member asking this question, I would absolutely suggest or recommend buying COVID coverage. But the one thing we would absolutely do is offer a quote both with and without coverage. If the cost difference isn't enough to be marketed, I would certainly buy the COVID coverage.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I've heard is that first of all, you need 2 doses of the vaccine. So if you've got one dose, but you don't have the second dose, you're not like fully vaccinated yet. But also, it's 95% effective. That's what I read in one article. And so there's still a 5% chance that you could get COVID, even if you've been vaccinated. And also the vaccine takes 30 days to become like fully effective. So, you know, if you were like trying to quickly get a vaccine now and then still take a trip this winter, you probably should still get COVID coverage this winter. That would be my recommendation.
Absolutely. Will getting the vaccine preclude me from getting COVID coverage?
Yeah, so I mean, if you get the vaccine here in Canada and then you still want to get COVID coverage, then you still can. Um, you just need to pay the extra surcharge for COVID coverage, and you need to get the vaccine far enough, like in the future, far enough in the past, far enough in the future, far enough in the past, so that you could still have the coverage for COVID. Okay, will the insurance company pay the costs for me to get the vaccine? So I think this one is talking about at destination, Pam. So will the insurance
Absolutely.
company pay the costs for me to get the vaccine at destination?
No. The policy that we issue is designed to take care of costs required for your medical care. So they're not going to pay for the cost of the vaccine because it's not required for a medical situation that you're experiencing.
Right. It's not an emergency.
That's right. If you receive the vaccine on your own, would the policy be void?
So what we understand from our insurance companies is that if you get the vaccine at destination, so you're on a trip and you decide you're in Florida or whatever, and you have a chance to get the vaccine while you're down there, the policy wouldn't be void. Some companies aren't paying for the like if you should have an adverse effect or if you should actually get COVID because of the vaccine, they're not paying for those type of things. But we have had one company now, just hot off the press, that has said, look, if you go and get the vaccination while you're at destination and you do have an adverse reaction, then we will cover it, because at the end of the day, it's still a good thing for the insurance company for you to have that vaccine. And if you're willing to, stand in line or pay for it or whatever you have to do to get it, then they are willing to take the risk on that and pay for the adverse effects. So that was pretty good, I thought.
Very good news.
Yeah, very good news. Okay, frequently asked questions about different destinations and crossing the border.
Does the cost of COVID coverage change based on the destination country? And what about US states?
Yeah, so different companies do different things. So we have one company specifically that asks for your destination, and based on the incident rate at your destination, their price is going to change. So whether that's a country like a South American country or a European country or whatever, or even specific states, it depends on where you're going to and where you're spending 80% of your time. And your coverage is priced based on the incident rate at that destination. So the answer is yes for some companies. Other companies aren't as sophisticated, and so it's not priced that way. Ooh, here we go, Pam. You can tell them, how does it work when traveling to multiple destinations in a single trip?
Well, for the insurance company that does take your destination into consideration, they want to know where you spend 80% of your time. So if you're spending 80% of your time in Florida, then that's where they'll base the pricing on. If you are going to be traveling to several areas and you don't have a destination where you're spending 80% of your time, then you might want to look at a policy that doesn't have that requirement, just to make sure that you're not going to be affecting your coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens if you change your destination after departure, Lori?
Well, if something like that should happen, like let's say you expected that you would spend your entire trip or more than 80% of your trip in Florida, and then that changes to, we decided to go to California, I don't know, whatever you might do, you should call us and let us know, and we can update the insurance company and they can decide whether or not that, there's going to be any effect to your policy or not.
Absolutely.
Okay, if conditions change at your destination after I purchased the policy, how does that affect the policy?
Well, if you've already purchased the policy, it won't affect it in any way. It will affect a quote. So in order to preserve your pricing and make sure you don't see a price increase, you want to purchase your policy early, so that any negative changes at the destination won't impact your coverage.
Mhm.
Can we ship our car and then drive it back without any issues at the border?
Well, this doesn't exactly sound like a travel insurance related question, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm qualified to answer it. But what we've heard from clients is that if you ship your car down and fly down to get it, use your car and then come back, that the Canadian border crossing guards are not, you know, not disallowing people to come across the border. So you are allowed to come back with your car across the border. You're just not allowed to go out. Is that true or not? Well, that's what we've heard. So, people will tell us more stories, I'm sure, as time goes on.
Absolutely.
Frequently asked questions. I have COVID at destination. Now what? So you've contracted COVID. Now what? This could be interesting. Okay. If needing to call for pre-authorization at destination, who do you call, Pam?
Well, you don't call MediQuote. There's not much we can do. We will have provided you with an email that includes a confirmation page. If you have downloaded our phone app, you will have access to a wallet card. If you are in Canada or the US, there will be a toll-free number for you to use to call the claim center. If you're outside of those areas, there will also be a second number, and it will be a collect number so that you're not having to pay for any exorbitant phone fees. But definitely you give the insurance company a call and let them know what's going on with your situation. And you call first whenever possible.
Exactly.
Does the insurance company ship us home by air ambulance if we get COVID?
Yeah, so you know what the insurance company, what they do is they do whatever the treating medical officer feels is necessary, medically necessary for treatment of your condition. So if you have COVID and the treating medical officer at your destination, the doctor who's treating you, suggests to the insurance company that it would be best to send you back to Canada, even though you have COVID, um, then that's what the insurance company will do. So we have heard from one of our insurance companies that they have had some situations where the treating medical officer has suggested that they send this person back to Canada. And even though they're COVID positive, they got an air ambulance and they got all the necessary equipment that they would need to transport this person back to Canada and put them in a COVID ward in Canada for treatment. So it is possible, and it has now been done by some of our insurance companies. Okay, our quarantine expenses provided if my spouse or travel companion tests positive for COVID.
Well, it depends on the policy. Now, some policies out there don't have any quarantine benefits, but there are others that do. So again, that's a question you're going to want to ask definitely when you're purchasing. And if quarantine benefits are provided, those benefits are designed to cover some expenses if you test positive for COVID and you do have to quarantine, but you're not hospitalized. They include some money for living expenses as well as food, taxi fares. Again, it does vary between policies.
But they definitely won't be having any companion benefits if you're not on the same insurance company. That's for
No,
sure.
no, correct.
So you want to make sure you're on the same insurance company.
Do these policies require you to pay medical costs upfront and submit claims later?
Yeah, so all of the companies that we represent will guarantee payment to the hospital should you become hospitalized so that you don't have to pay upfront. I mean, obviously, if it's something small and you're just going to see a doctor and it's $100, $150 US, they might ask you to pay for that and they'll reimburse you once the claim documentation has been adjudicated. But for the most part, if it's a significant sum, the insurance companies will send you to a hospital that they have a relationship with and that they have a payment plan with, and then they will guarantee the payment.
Exactly.
Do these policies work for private hospitals? So I guess that means would they provide coverage for private hospitals, Pam?
Well, the insurance company will, when you call them, they are going to recommend a facility that they already have a billing arrangement with. But there isn't the policies that we carry, there isn't a designated hospital that you have to go to. Again, whether or not these private hospitals will work directly with the company, with the insurance company, will be the hospital's choice. So I don't believe they're excluded. You just may have to pay some bills up front. What if I want to go to a specific hospital?
Yeah, so I guess that would be something you'd have to discuss with the insurance company. So if you are in a certain area or in Palm Springs and you have a hospital there that you've heard good things about, if the insurance company doesn't have a problem with that, you could probably go there. But it is definitely something you'd have to bring up with them should you require emergency treatment. Okay, what is the cost for an ICU stay for COVID?
Well, I don't have any knowledge. I don't know. I haven't seen any claims when it comes to an ICU stay for COVID. Um, we're not really made aware of what hospital stays are and what
Mhm.
those costs are incurred. I mean,
Yeah.
there have been incidents of hearsay, and I did speak to a gentleman who knew somebody in the U.S. who said that for a single person, you were looking at a cost of at least $1 million. So If that
Wow.
holds true, about $1 million.
But it's pretty much anyone's guess.
Yeah, that's hearsay for sure.
Yeah.
If you contract COVID while away and hospitalization is required that extends beyond the period specified for your insurance coverage, does the insurance coverage end?
Yeah, so even before COVID, there was a special clause in your policies that when, uh, like, if you are hospitalized when your policy expires, that your coverage is automatically extended without additional payment of premium until such a time that you are discharged from hospital. And then it also is extended automatically for an additional 72 hours so that you have time to get home. And all of that is just an automatic extension. It's written into the policy. You don't have to call anyone. You don't have to do anything. And the same goes for COVID. So if while you're away and you're hospitalized, your coverage would extend automatically until your hospitalization is over and for an extra additional time so that you can get home.
Very good.
If you have COVID coverage, are you guaranteed to get into a hospital?
Well, the insurance company will definitely want you to get the medical care you need. I'm assuming we've had this question as to whether a US hospital would deny admission to a Canadian over a US citizen, that type of thing. That's not something we can predict. That decision isn't made by the insurance company. But if you do have coverage and you have COVID coverage, they're definitely going to want to get you into a hospital, and it will be up to the hospital to get you admitted.
Yeah, I think that the rule of thumb is there's no guarantees in COVID. COVID
Exactly.
times.
If you tested positive for COVID, would Canadians be treated as a lower priority next to Americans getting medical care?
Yeah, I think in the US, a paying customer is a paying customer. It's not like in Canada where, if a hospital treats a Canadian, they get coverage or paid, I guess, through the government health insurance plan. And if they don't, then it would be some other, or maybe they wouldn't get paid or whatever. In the US, everyone's a paying customer, and if you've got coverage for emergency medical treatment, then you probably are on a level playing field. And maybe it's even a better case scenario for the hospital that you have private insurance versus someone that had Medicare or Medicaid in the US. I don't know. It's hard to know.
Definitely a hard question.
Mhm. Okay, once discharged from a hospital, is there coverage for return airfare, or would that fall under trip interruption coverage?
I definitely for the emergency medical policies, they don't cover airfare costs to come home. They don't cover any flight change fees, anything like that. These policies are designed definitely for your medical care. So if you want that type of coverage, you definitely want to look at a trip interruption policy. That's where that benefit would come into play.
The only time a insurance company would send you home is if they don't, like, if they feel like you're too much of a risk to stay at destination, and they want to
Right.
like send you home as part of the like treatment plan, so that if something else should happen, like if you should have a recurrence of the same thing or whatever, that they wouldn't have to pay for that. So that would be the only time they would pay for a return trip home. Okay, frequently asked questions about medical evacuations. So since we're on the topic here, Pam.
Since we're on the topic. If you get sick and need to return home to continue medical treatment, will you be flown on a private plane?
So the answer to this is basically again, whatever is medically necessary. So the treating medical officer will decide if you are fit to travel on a commercial plane, or if, that's not a possibility. If you need a medical escort, which could be a doctor, could be a nurse, whatever, they will make a plan that is going to get you home safely. Because the last thing that they want is someone who is already, sick and, getting treatment. They don't want to put them in a plane and then have another problem in the air, because that is just another problem for everybody. First of all, you're in the air, you can't get to a hospital, and then they need to find a place to land, and they're off the flight path, and hundreds of people will then be not catching their connecting flight or whatever. So yeah, they don't want that to happen. So it's just whatever that you might need, based on what the treating medical officer feels is best for you. Okay, if I need to be flown back to Canada, will the insurance cover incidentals such as returning the car?
Well, each policy is different, but every policy that I have seen and looked at has a clause that does cover returning a vehicle. Whether it's a rented vehicle being returned to the rental agency or your own personal vehicle being returned to Canada. And again, depending on the policy, they may hire a company to do that, or they may cover incidental expenses for a family member to go down and bring the car back for you. Just look for one of the benefits in the policy, and it'll explain how that's covered. If you get flown back by Medevac, does the policy return the spouse back home?
Yeah, so this, I guess, comes down to the companion benefits again, because having your spouse return home with you is technically a companion benefit. So if you've decided that you're going to go with one company and your spouse is going to go with a different company, chances are you don't have any companion benefits. So you're actually, by doing that, you're actually giving this benefit up. So it all depends on that scenario. How much is the approximate cost for a medical evacuation, Pam?
Can I say I have no idea? I have actually had no knowledge. I've never seen what the cost would be to have somebody medically evacuated. And that's going to depend whether the individual can travel on their own or if they require a medical escort at the same time. I think each individual scenario is going to be priced very differently.
Yeah, and it only goes up from there. Like the cost of a seat on a plane is not very much, but if you're hiring a air ambulance that has special equipment in it, and doctors and nurses and all of that stuff, they've got to go two ways, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm guessing.
I would think so. Frequently asked questions, general travel insurance questions.
Oh, these are like questions about the old days.
I was going to say these might be easy. If you come home early, do you get a refund for the number of days remaining in your policy?
Yes, so early return refunds are available for all of our companies. You just have to satisfy the requirements of the insurance company. So you have to, first of all, provide proof of your early return. So that would be like a boarding pass. This year, it's all about boarding passes because no one's driving, at least not yet, for the most part. Although if you're shipping your car, then you would be driving home. And so you need to provide just proof of when you cross the border. And then you also have to get the proof of early return to us in a certain, some policies have time limits, and you have to get us those receipts by a certain time. So as long as you satisfy those requirements, you can get a refund for the number of days remaining. Typically, the insurance company charges a fee. If there's no fee, there's definitely a minimum refund, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And if you have a claim, you're actually not eligible for a
Right.
refund,
Yeah.
or if you're intending to make a claim. So if you haven't made the claim yet and you're asking for a refund, you may want to balance out what the claim amount would be versus the
Right.
refund and decide what you want to do.
Aha. Which starts to answer this question. What happens if you made a claim, but it was rejected?
Well, then what we would do on your behalf is we would contact the insurance company, let them know that you had started a claim, and sometimes people even stop the claim before they proceed. They've just made the call to make sure the insurance company is aware. And then we would ask them to review your case individually and see if it would be allowable to still complete the early return refund. And usually they do because no claim was paid. Do policies for under 55-year-olds with no medical questionnaire still exist? Or do you have to get a policy with a questionnaire for adequate coverage?
I think that policies with no medical questionnaire still exist for the under 55s, and sometimes it's under 60, depending on the insurance company. So you just have to really, shop around, and like if you call MediQuote, we will shop around for you to get you the best options. Like sometimes if you're healthy, it's not a bad idea to answer a questionnaire. That way the insurance company knows that you're healthy, and then you get a better price. If you're not so healthy, maybe it's not such a great benefit to answer a medical questionnaire, and so maybe you wouldn't want to answer a medical questionnaire in that case. But it all depends on what options are available, and all the factors that go into getting a quote for travel insurance. If your medical conditions do not change, why is an age bracket surcharge applied?
Because the warranty runs out? What insurance companies do is they take a look at the average of claims in your age group. Um, So typically the one in my mind that sticks out is when you turn 75. To me, that seems to be a very big difference in pricing. And I think it's simply due to statistics and the number of claims they see for somebody in the age group of 75 to 80 versus the 71 or to 74 age group. Um, so even though your medical conditions don't change, your age has changed, and the statistical probability of you having a claim goes up. So that extra candle hurts.
That's for sure.
What if your age changes during your trip? Is it based on your age on the day of departure or the day you buy your policy, Lori?
Yeah, so you know what? Once your policy is locked in, if your age changes on your trip, like if you have the big 7-0 or the big 6-0 or whatever it is during your trip, it doesn't affect anything. Um, the question would be then, is the rate based on your age on the day of departure or on the day you buy your policy? Because let's say your age changes between the day you get your quote and the day that you depart on your trip. You really want to buy a policy from a company that will base your rates on your age at time of purchasing the policy, and that way, if you purchase for your birthday, you get a better rate. You kind of get the younger age band rate for this one last hurrah, this one last trip.
Exactly.
Okay, what expenses does your provincial healthcare plan cover outside of Canada?
Um, well, your provincial healthcare plan covers you for medical costs to the same value had that medical situation occurred at home. Um, they do not cover any land ambulance, air ambulance, or repatriation if somebody passes away in either another province or another country. Um, so they do cover to the same value other medical costs. So if a broken leg here at home were to be $10,000 to fix, but you were at a location where it was 20,000, they would only cover the initial 10. Will your rates increase for 2021? And if so, when?
Yeah, that is the age-old question. We always get that question. And, for the first time, this year, it is just so incredibly difficult to know what the future holds. Um, in the past, we would say, yes, rates increase every kind of summer for the next fall travel. And sometimes insurance companies put on like an early bird sale. So they'll hold off their rate increase, and then people can purchase their insurance during the summer at the reduced rate, kind of last year's rate. But yeah, it's hard to know what's going to happen this year again, just because of COVID. And a lot of that will probably depend on like what happens with COVID claims. Everyone that is traveling right now is looking for coverage for COVID. And, will the insurance companies see a lot of claims for COVID? Will they pay more than they thought they would pay? It's hard. They didn't know what to base their prices on for this season. So I'm quite certain they don't know yet what their prices will be based on for next season. So you'll have to stay tuned and find out what's going to be in store for next year, because even we have no idea what to expect.
Yeah, the crystal ball's a little dusty.
It is. And that is the end of our questions. So thank you very much for joining us today. And if you saw something that or had a question that we didn't answer, please send your questions to us. And our email address specifically for questions is below, webinar@mediquote.ca. So we would love to have your questions so that we could answer them for you. So please do send that to us. You can always visit us online. Our website is always open, www.mediquote.ca. You can call us at our toll-free number for a quote. You can get online quotes by going to our website, and all the good stuff that websites have. And that is everything. So thank you very much. Thank you, Pam, for joining me, and it was
Thanks
a
for
pleasure.
sharing with me.
And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day.